Welcome back to the podcast and to another match report from the Chelsea first team, where today we're going to be taking a look back at yesterday's draw against Brentford. Chelsea's unbeaten record in the Premier League remains intact, but at what cost? Just one win in the last 8 Premier League meetings with Brentford. They are well and truly a bogey team of ours, with Thomas Frank and without. Everybody wrote Brentford off prior to the season, ourselves on this channel included, but they put up a hell of a fight yesterday. Did they deserve the draw? I don't know. The way Chelsea played in that first half, I don't think you can really say that Chelsea deserved to get 3 points out of that, but we will get into it. We'll talk about the main performers, the best player on the pitch and the best midfielder in the world, undoubtedly in Moises Caicedo. Before we do, make sure to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to be dropping an under-18s match report as well very shortly on their draw yesterday with Arsenal. But let's get straight into it, and we'll talk about the team selection initially, because look, first game back after the international break is always a little bit clunky, is always a little bit disjointed. There's always players that obviously have been playing with different teams for the last couple of weeks, players that might be blowing, players that might have been travelling as well. And one in particular is Reece James. Now, Enzo Maresca was asked about Reece James before the game. Obviously, the fact that he played 2 games with Thomas Tuchel, I think he played 2 full 90 minutes. He definitely started both games in the international break. So I'm not surprised that he was rested. However, Enzo Maresca has this tendency to double back on himself. You know, he said before the game, we've got to manage it. Reece is more than capable of playing 2-3 games a week, but we are the ones that have got to manage him. You know, Tuchel doesn't have that problem. Reece James was brought on at half-time yesterday to shore the game up. It took him 5 minutes or so to get settled, but as soon as he got a feel of the ball, as soon as he got into the rhythm, got into the tempo, he shored our back line up astronomically. I mean, Cucurella for me was more of a confusing omission on the left side. I think while I rate Hato, I mean, to give him his first Premier League start in a game that was going to be tough, I expected Ouattara to start. Obviously, he didn't. He came off the bench, caused Cucurella a few problems when he did come on. But Cucurella, I thought, I thought we'd got to the point now where he starts 38 games out of 38 on the left side. Reece James is pretty close to being 38 out of 38 on the right side. Fofana on the right doesn't make much sense to me. I think while, yes, that central partnership of Tosin and Trevor Chalobah, we've seen it's the most experienced partnership. Enzo Maresca does like a little bit of experience, a little bit of leadership in that back line, ideally with one or the other of those two. But Wes Fofana, he's been extremely vocal and critical about whenever he's played. You know, the last time, even though he was trying to be, I think it was a backhanded compliment. You know, he said, Wes can definitely play there. But the last 45 minutes he played there was the worst 45 minutes I've seen in a Chelsea shirt. And, I mean, it definitely didn't help his case last night, Wes Fofana. I don't think he was a standout poor performance. I don't think he was the worst player on the pitch. Definitely not the worst player in a Chelsea shirt. But he didn't cover himself in glory. He's not a right back. Whether he was playing on the right side of a 3 or as an out-and-out right back when Hato came back in. Wes Fofana doesn't have the physical ability to do that right. So, look, we've all seen the toll the injuries have taken on his muscle mass, his density. His legs are not those of a footballer. They are incredibly skinny, incredibly fragile. But I feel like this guy should come with wrapping tape that says fragile. He should come with some sort of disclaimer that says, winger, you're not allowed to go shoulder to shoulder with him, because he looks frail, man. He looks like he needs a Zimmer frame out there. I really don't know where this, £80 million player has gone, because when we signed Fofana, I was excited. I thought he was a great defender, particularly on the ball. Looked like a real good up-and-coming young talent. Where that has gone, the assurance, the quality on the ball, the positioning, I think, while, it's difficult to blame any one individual for Kevin Schad's first goal. Well, I think Chelsea as a whole were just too slow. It was just too easy for Henderson to put one ball over the top, and then between them, Tosin, Chalobah and Wes Fofana, who had one job, mark one player. It was the blind leading the blind at the back, and I think Tosin to let a winger show himself inside that easily, to let a winger cut in that easily, is criminal. But he did kind of shout for Fofana to cover him, and Fofana just didn't have the legs, didn't have the defensive, the situational awareness to know where that, to know where the second option to shut down was. And, You saw Tosin scream as kind of, as it was happening. So maybe a little bit too little too late. But yeah, Fofana for me is one of those where I just don't really see what Chelsea can do with him. I mean, other than try and give him slowly more minutes, try and build him back up, try and let him regain his confidence. Because at the end of the day, the only way in which we're recouping any of the 80 mil that we spent on him, or 72 mil or whatever it was, maybe I'm rounding up, but it's an astronomical fee. And the only way that we're recouping half of that, let's forget about the majority, the only way we're recouping 40 mil out of that is if he manages to play a couple of seasons at the top level. Whether that's with us or elsewhere, I don't know. But he's on big wages. He's on 200 grand a week. I can't see us getting a loan move for Wesley Fofana. Definitely not one where the loan club covers his wage. We will have to cover, akin to Chilwell, at least part of this deal. So Wes Fofana is a bit of a conundrum for me. He's very clearly not a right back. He's very clearly a centre back. And it's very clear that Enzo Maresca doesn't believe he's the one that can step up in the absence of Levi Colwill. So it's a shame for me that Josh Achimpong is getting pushed to the side. I think if you're going to play a centre-back in the, on the right of a three, Josh Achimpong is a far more natural fit, a far more natural option than Wes Fofana. But, they do say there's a reason why we're not managers. So, I mean, look, hopefully Fofana, if he does continue playing, can prove me wrong. But for me, this was a big sign at the back that, look, if our centre-backs aren't going to stay consistent, our full-backs need to. Cucurella needs to be starting every single week, as does Reece James at this point. He's shown us that he can do it at the back end of last season, managing to stay fit the majority of last season. Now he's playing consistently with Chelsea, England. We've got Champions League games, and that may well be another conversation. Like, I understand that I hate it when we're talking about prioritising, because look, professional footballers should be able to play 2 games a week, but buying in midweek, I can understand why Reece James, off the back of that heavy international break, didn't start last night. But in the centre of midfield, one player that you're never not going to see start is obviously Moises Caicedo. I'm getting tired of saying it. I'm getting tired of my own voice. This is the best midfielder in the world, hands down. Nobody can lace his boots. He's a better footballer than Palmer. He's a better footballer than anybody else in the Premier League. He's better than Vert. He's better than any other. I don't care what type of midfielder you are. Pedri, Gavi, Bellingham, any type of midfielder in the world is not as complete as Moises Caicedo. The quality of the goal last night was just the icing on the cake. If he hadn't have scored last night, he probably still would have got my man of the match, because the recoveries, the defensive actions, the breaking up play, the awareness that he has to just do that job on his own in the middle. And Enzo Fernandez, again, didn't cover himself in glory yesterday, played a little bit higher than we're used to playing him, kind of alongside Buonanotte, who I thought was busy in the first half, didn't really do too much. I see him as, another real Kiernan Dewsbury Hall signing, kind of just utilitarian, good enough to play when we need him, but, he's never going to be, in the conversation about breaking through into the starting lineup, particularly with Cole Palmer coming back in and just changing the game. This guy, you can tell he's been itching to play in the last 2 weeks. He's been, Chelsea have been keeping it off the socials. He has been training virtually the entire time at Cobham. It's incredibly good to have him back. I mean, it's a shame that, we couldn't have him from the start today, because you saw the difference that he made when he came on. I'm pretty sure he had more shots than any other Chelsea player, any other player on the pitch, and he came on at 60-odd minutes. So, yeah, Cole Palmer, back in the open play goals, that's another positive thing for him, because, there were a lot of people looking at the stats and look at, he hasn't scored an open play goal since February or since last year, whatever it was. Injuries, form, a lot of things have to be considered, but Chelsea fans were never getting caught up in that narrative. Chelsea fans were never concerned about Cole Palmer. We always knew that there was a quality there that you just can't get rid of, and whether it took a month, a week, a couple of days, he is well and truly back. I think last night, the quality of the finish showed that he never really left. He did have a few more chances, which, maybe a fully fit Cole Palmer, a Cole Palmer with a few more games under his belt does put away. But look, again, I just want to go back to the first point I made. Brentford, 1 win in 8 Premier League games. This is a team that we really, really struggle against. I expected it, even though I expected it to be slightly different and slightly more in our favour with no Thomas Frank, Wissa and Mbeumo. Still a very good team. Sharda, Thiago, still some very good players in there. Of course, you've got the experience at Henderson. So I did always have kind of a bit of a gut feeling that it was going to be a tough game yesterday. And when I put that out in my short earlier in the week, people said, Brentford, stop giving them that much respect. Look, you've got to understand there are certain teams, Everton, Brentford, they could have lost 37 games out of 38. If they play us last game of the season, they have as much chance as anybody to win that game. But yeah, moving forward, I thought Enzo was all right. I think he's not as aggressive going forward in the pass. I think he's looking for more defensive passes, looking to keep the ball, which, look, in the Premier League, a lot of people say that that's kind of a Pepism. Players like Jack Grealish, Jeremy Doku, who are so good at going at, be aggressive players, but, you see them more often than not. They don't want to lose the ball. They come back, they play it short. I get a real feeling of that when I watch Enzo Fernandez at the moment. But I thought Neto on the right side was superb. I think his delivery is phenomenal. I think it's, João Pedro is not a true 9 per se, in that he likes to drop deep and he likes to roam. You've got Liam Delap on that pitch, and we win that game 5-2 with a hat-trick of headers from Liam Delap. The quality of crosses coming in from the right, from Pedro Neto, on his left foot more often than not, but on his right as well. This guy can deliver the ball on a sixpence. Absolutely phenomenal player. And I think pace, ability, delivery, he's got everything in abundance. And this is definitely, we'll go to the other side in a minute, but this is, for me, him and Esteval are guaranteed to be starting on either side. I don't care who's on which side. Work it out amongst yourselves. Fight it out amongst yourselves. If it means giving Esteval the leg up and letting him go on the right, so be it. Pedro Neto can do it, like I said, on both feet. And, we've seen how a one-footed winger is very restrictive, particularly in Chelsea's system, because it means you can't go to the byline. You've got to cut in every time. But Pedro Neto, doesn't have that problem. He can go to the byline and whip it in with either foot. He can cut in and put in a lovely, either a floated cross, zipped cross. He can do all sorts of delivery. I think he's an excellent player, and another good showing from him last night. I think Lewis Potter had a very good game against him. On the other side, Jamie Gittins. This is a player that I'm confused as to what we did. What was that cameo against Bayer Leverkusen? Just because he was familiar with the team? Just because it was a Bundesliga team? I don't know. But, I mean, yeah, for me, that was very strange. It was just another performance where it was just not, he just didn't look confident enough. He just didn't look confident in his own ability to beat his man. Didn't look like he thought he had it in the locker. And yeah, Coyote, fast, physical, good player, but he's not a winger that should be locking you up, realistically. If you're Jamie Bino Gittins, you're thinking, you're looking at that team sheet and going, yeah, I've got the better of this. And I know that they played 5 at the back, so there was, a little bit less space than he might be used to. They did play a little bit deeper, and for a lot of the second half, particularly, well, I mean, he wasn't on for a lot of the second half. The game kind of changed. Actually, yeah, that's true. The game changed when Gittins went off. I'm pretty sure it was when Gittins went off for Parma on 55 that's when the game changed. Look, it's one of those where, of course, while he's a Chelsea player, I'm going to back him. I wasn't 100% on the signing. I did think to get rid of Madueke and get a very similar player in that is maybe a little bit more developed. That was my line of thinking. But now, yeah, I'm confidently on the other side of that. I think I was always a little bit fearful of what Madueke would do at Arsenal, because I'm a big, and I have always been a big Madueke fan. I think ego and attitude are his only problems. Aside from that, footballing ability, he's got no issues. And if he is happy and playing consistently on that right side, he can do very, very well. And I think the form that he was in, the way that he's playing this season, don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily a step up from Chelsea. It's not like he's become a different player now, because he was doing this in glimpses and at the back end of last year. But I do think Chelsea fans are going to start to turn heel very soon if we don't see something from Jamie Gittins. And like I said, he's young. We'll give him time to adjust, give him time to adapt. He's going to be playing in the Champions League in midweek as well. So fingers crossed, that's another league that's a little bit more familiar to him. A few more teams that may be a little bit more familiar to him. But yeah, to see the impact that Esteval's had, to see the quality that he's brought to the team immediately, and to compare that to a player that is, his elder, should be in many ways more developed and arguably better. Yeah, I do kind of fear for Gittins. I think Garnacho coming on yesterday showed more than Gittins in the 10-15 minutes that he was on. And yeah, I'd be very surprised if Garnacho's not starting on the left side and Neto's not starting on the right while Estevao is still out. Like I said, Neto and Estevao would be my wing pairing while everyone's fit. But for the moment, if we're going into Bayern in midweek without Estevao again, Garnacho gets the nod for me. But João Pedro, again, I thought, in a quieter game for him where he was up against three centre-backs, I think he did fairly well. Again, going back to he's not a number 9, he's not an out-and-out striker like Liam Delap, who would have been better to maybe, stretch the play, a few more runs in behind. That's something that João Pedro, I think, does have in his locker. So maybe he could have been a little bit more, more than one-dimensional yesterday. But look, assist for Palmer's goal. He gets in amongst it. He's a nuisance. He had some lovely touches on the turn. Lovely passages of play that he started. I think he's a superb player, and yeah, I've got no real complaints about João Pedro yesterday. I think it was a tough game for him. And then obviously, yeah, we've mentioned Cole Palmer, Alejandro Garnacho, Reece James, Marc Cucurella, 4 of the 5 subs. The 5th was Tyreek George, who I thought, yeah, gave as good as he got. I think it's a difficult situation for Tyreek George. He was very clearly, you could see from interviews he gave, he was very clearly considering moves away last season. He was very clearly weighing up his future. He got that deal done on deadline day to Fulham and it fell through. I believe it's through no fault of our own and no fault of Tyreek George. I believe it was on Fulham's end that the problems, were received or problems were caused. But yeah, this is his opportunity. Mark Hughes been called back and not included in the squad again. It looks like, and Enzo Maresca, I think, alluded to, in the media that he wants to give different people different chances. And Tyreek George, having played as a false 9 against Fulham last season, having scored against Fulham last season, and then, done it in a couple of games this year already, I think he will get chances. Not as many as he would hope, but look, I think he can still do a part. If he knuckles down, if he really, commits himself for this next 3-4 months, I think he could get a very good move, whether it's permanent or whether it's loan. He could get a very good move in January, and there will be a lot of clubs looking at Tyreek George. He's a very, very good player, very talented individual. If he's serious about wanting to level up his career, he says to the gaffer, look, while Delap's out, let me go and sit in the 9 and let me do what I can do in the Champions League as well as in the Premier League. But of course, if you talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. So yeah, Tyreek George, again, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, coming back from the international break, coming back into a team where it was a little bit disjointed as a sub. Yeah, I wouldn't have said I would have expected him to turn the game around on his head. But yeah, I think he's got a place in this team. Much like Buonanotte, he's not going to be, pushing for a starting position. He's not going to be in that conversation, let's be honest. But he's still a player that we will rely on and we can rely on. And hopefully his quality shines through when we do need to rely on him this season. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all of it to talk about. Look, I'll say very quickly, I think the Brentford goal, no, it shouldn't have stood. I do think whether it was Watara or someone else, I don't know, whoever that player was in the middle, I do think he was interfering with play on the long throw. However, I will say we got away with one against Josh King against Fulham. Look, it might have been a foul in the book, but let's be honest, we got away with one. And I think they got away with one. Look, as Sir Alex Ferguson used to say, over the course of a season, you're going to get decisions go for you. You're going to get decisions go against you. We've had one of each this season already. Arguably two in our favour with the Crystal Palace one. So I don't think Chelsea fans can be too miffed about decisions. However, particularly given our first half performance. I think any Chelsea fan looking at that game yesterday and saying, refereeing decisions cost us the game. No, our first 56 minutes cost us the game. If we play like we did in the first 50 minutes yesterday, in the next 34 Premier League games, we're not making top 4. I can guarantee you that. If we play like we did in the last 35 minutes, we can challenge for the league. But if we play like we did in the first half, and I don't know what this first half, second half thing is, it was rife under Pochettino. It happened a few times last season where we were crap in the first half and Enzo Maresca turned the game around. Yeah, that needs to change. We need more consistency over 90 minutes. But for now, Chelsea are still unbeaten, 4 games in, still not a single defeat. Fingers crossed we are looking ahead to Bayern Munich in midweek, kicking off our Champions League campaign in a hell of a way. So we will be doing a live match, or sorry, not live match, but a match reaction or match report to that. Make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to follow us on the Instagram, on the TikTok at Two Blues Podcast. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll be back very soon with some more great Chelsea content. Up the Chelsea.